Hello everybody, we are talking about should parents have to have licenses. So this is going to be a rather short video lecture. The essay is long, but it's very straightforward. I mean, it's not a particularly hard one to understand because he pretty much says it concisely, or for the most part. But our question is, should parents have to get a license to have children? And the idea his idea is basically to weed out the psychologically and physically abusive people from having kids. He's not trying to tell people how to be a good parent. He's not trying to weed out run-of-the-mill bad parents. He just wants to stop the physically and psychologically abusive people. Like, we've all seen those horrible news stories about kids who are being left in closets, and just those are the people he's trying to weed out. Okay, so just as a reminder, the checklist items, when I say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, they all refer to the 6 items you should be looking for in each essay. Number 1, what is the philosophical question being asked? In this essay, it is, should people have to get a license to become parents? Step 2, define your key terms. Well, there's not a whole lot to define here. We know what parents is. We know what a license is because he's referring to a license similar to, say, a driver's license. We should define morality. He does not specify how he's defining morality, but what he does do is give you a clue. He's defining morality based on the consequences. Whatever has the best consequences is moral. Weeding out bad parents is moral because it's saving the kids that would be abused. Okay, so step 2, we're defining morality. He's defining it, I'd say his name, but quite frankly, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. I think it's Lafayette. It's French, and I'm not the best at pronunciation. So, step 2, morality based on consequences. Step 3, how does the author answer the question? Since our question is, should parents have license? His answer is yes. Step 4, well, what is the supporting argument that the author gives to support their answer? So, what is his supporting argument? It's pretty straightforward. As a society, what things do we license? We license driving, we license doctors, we license attorneys, accountants. We license firemen. They have to get firemen. Anyway, what we license are things that meet 2 criteria. 1, they can be potentially harmful to others. So, if it could harm other people, that's the first criteria. Second criteria, it requires competency to perform. That's why you have to take a driving test to get your driver's license. You have to show that you're not going to run and cause accidents that kill people. Is it perfect? The driver's license? No, it's not. But the idea is, if you're a really bad driver, to stop you from getting a license until you can prove that you're a decent driver. Okay, so the 2 requirements for things that need to have license are it's potentially harmful to others and it requires competency in order to do. Do these 2 criteria fit parenting? Yes, according to the author. It's harmful to others because if you do it poorly, you can harm your children. And it requires competency because, well, I don't know how many of you are parents. You need to know something. It requires competence not to. I don't know how to say it. I have a 5-year-old. You need some basic emotional maturity. It requires competency to perform it, not to hurt them, not to do something that's going to hurt them inadvertently. So it requires competency, and it could potentially be harmful to others. It meets both criteria, which according to this author means it requires a license. Now, how would you set it up? He's suggesting basically you take a psychological test. He freely says that the psychological test will not be perfect, just like the driver's license test is not perfect. There are people who have licenses to drive that should not because they're horrible drivers, but somehow they pass the test. Does that mean because bad drivers pass the test that we should get rid of the driver's license altogether? No, because at least it weeds out some of the bad drivers. He's going to say the same thing about his test. It's not going to be perfect. You're looking for people who are psychologically and physically harmful to others. And you are going to weed out some people. Will some people get through that should not? Yes. Does that mean you shouldn't do it? He's going to say no. So, you're basically going to give a test. If you pass the test, go ahead and have a child. Alright. He's not saying that you would never have a child. Let's say, with like the driver's license. You go, you fail. Does that mean you're never going to get a license? No. You go, you practice, you come back, you take it again. In his case, you would go get your license. Let's say you failed. So you might consider therapy or something to improve your emotional stability or your whatever your issue is, and then you retake it. This is what he's suggesting. This has a lot of practical problems, and he knows it, and he goes over quite a few of them. 2 of them already mentioned. It's not going to weed out every horrible psychologically and physically abusive person. He thinks you should still do it, just like the license. It'll get a lot of them. Then you have practical issues that he doesn't mention, like what if you get pregnant and you didn't pass the license, and you go to take it and you didn't pass it? What happens to the child then? He doesn't talk about that. There are practical issues about how the license would work. Do you actually run it like a license and you go in and you're licensed for 4 years? Some of this stuff he talks about. Some of the stuff he doesn't. Okay? But before we go into the objections for it, before we go into the practical or the theoretical objections, is it a good idea to license parents? Do you agree with his argument? And his argument is basically what we've said. If something fits these 2 criteria, it should be licensed, harmful to others, and it requires competence. Parenting fits both of those categories, it should be licensed. And that's pretty much the argument. Now, the last large part of this essay, he's going to go over 2 theoretical objections and a bunch of practical objections. For the checklist, you only need to know the first theoretical objection. So, step 5 is, what is the flaw in the argument? So, what's his flaw? He states it. The very first theoretical objection is, having kids is a human right. We have a right to have kids. Human beings, all human beings have a right to have kids. And anything that's going to hinder that is unjust. And that's the flaw. Step 6. Step 6 in the checklist is respond to the flaw and uphold your original position. And of course, this is all from the author's perspective. And the perspective here is, how does he come back to it? He says, you know what? There are a lot of rights. People have rights. But that doesn't mean they're absolute. There are limits, even to things that are human rights. The example he gives, and is a good one, is free speech. We have a right of free speech. We can say what we want. Okay? Now, just because I can say what I want, does that mean I have the right to go into a crowded movie theater and yell fire? If I do that, I'm going to incite a riot. Inciting a riot is illegal. I'm going to get arrested. But does that mean I don't have free speech? No, I have free speech, but there are limits to my free speech. And one of the limits are you can't incite a riot on purpose. You can't use your words to intentionally make people go, ah, fire. You can't do that. That's just wrong. So he's going to say having children is the same way. Yes, we have a right to have kids, but it should have certain limits. And the limit he's suggesting is to do the best we can to weed out psychologically and physically abusive parents. He is not trying to decide what a good parent is. So only good parents becomes parents. He's not trying to weed out all bad parents. So he's just trying to weed out the people that psychologically and physically abuse their children. He's trying to stop them from having kids. That's his idea. Now, whether you agree, disagree, whatever, go discuss it on the discussion boards, and I hope you enjoyed the essay. See you next week.